Part 1. Introduction. Did you know that 95% of people who start learning English today will give up within the next 18 months? And among the remaining 5%, only 1% can truly speak confidently with native speakers. That's exactly why I created this video, to reveal the 7 key steps that 95% of English learners completely skip. These steps aren't just theory. They're the result of 5 years of brain research, interviews with over 200 successful polyglots, and observations of thousands of learners who failed and then went on to succeed spectacularly. Imagine you're standing in the hallway of an office building in Manhattan. The elevator doors open, and out steps a group of American colleagues chatting excitedly about a new project. They see you and smile warmly. One of them says, "Hey, what do you think about the new marketing strategy?" Your heart is pounding. Your mouth goes dry. In your head, Vietnamese and English are swirling like a tornado. You understand each individual word, but you can't grasp the overall meaning. You fumble, I think it's good? In a shaky voice with off-key pronunciation. Their eyes shift from curious to disappointed, then polite but distant. They nod and quickly switch to another topic, speaking faster as if you don't exist. And that's the moment you realize. After 3 years of studying English, hundreds of hours of practice, and millions of dong invested, you're still an outsider in the world you're eager to join. In the next 60 minutes, I'll guide you through a journey that will completely change how you think about learning English. You'll understand why traditional methods fail so badly. Discover the secrets of people who master 3 or 4 languages and, most importantly, walk away with a specific, step-by-step roadmap that has been proven effective for thousands. This isn't a theoretical video. Everything I share is grounded in neuroscience, psycholinguistics, and real outcomes from people who have succeeded. You'll get concrete tools, hands-on exercises, and a completely new mindset for approaching language. If you're ready to let go of old beliefs about learning English, if you dare to face truths that might shock you about how you've been wasting time, and if you truly want to change your life, then stay with me. Because after this video, you'll never look at learning English the same way again. Part 2. The truth about the English teaching industry. No one wants to talk about. Did you know the global English teaching industry is worth $56 billion a year? And do you know why that number is so huge? The answer may surprise you. Because 9 out of 10 people learning English as a second language never achieve their fluency goal. In the next 8 minutes, I'm going to reveal 3 truths no language company wants you to know. First, why many programs deliberately keep you stuck at the intermediate level forever. Next, the true story of Maria, a software engineer who spent $12,000 over 3 years, yet still couldn't speak confidently with international colleagues. And finally, the method that 95% of language centers still use. One that was proven outdated decades ago. Before I share Maria's story, let me ask you this. If you owned a language school, would you want learners to become proficient quickly or slowly? Ethically, the answer is quickly. But from a business standpoint, the answer is completely different. An average language center in the US brings in $2 to $5 million in annual revenue. Where does that money come from? From learners re-enrolling again and again. Research shows the average learner will sign up for 4 to 6 different courses in their first 2 years. If they became proficient after the first course, centers would lose 75% of potential customers. This is precisely why most programs use a split-level strategy. Instead of 4 to 5 basic levels, they create 12 to 16 sub-levels. You always feel like you're progressing with certificates and tests, but in reality, you're moving forward extremely slowly. My personal view is that not all centers do this intentionally. However, their business model creates a natural incentive to prolong your learning journey. This brings us to Maria, a 32-year-old software engineer working at a tech company in Austin. Maria was born in Mexico and moved to the US at 15. Although her everyday conversational English was pretty good, she always felt insecure in professional meetings and presentations. She decided to invest seriously in improving her professional English. Over 3 years, Maria took 2 courses at a local community college, $3,200. Hired a private tutor twice a week, $7,200. Bought online courses and textbooks, $1,600. Total, nearly $12,000. The result? When I met Maria at a seminar last year, she said, "I still feel like my brain has to translate from Spanish to English every time I speak at work. I understand everything others say, but I can't respond quickly and naturally." Maria is not alone. A 2023 survey of 1,200 learners of English as a second language in major U.S. cities found 73% had taken at least 2 different programs. 68% still felt anxious speaking English in professional settings. 84% described themselves as able to understand but not speak fluently. These numbers aren't random. My personal view is that I've been in a similar position. I know the frustration of realizing you've invested so much time and money with results that fall short. But why are the results like this? The problem lies in the method that 95% of language schools are still using. They continue to rely on the grammar translation method, an approach developed in the 19th century to teach Latin and ancient Greek. This method focuses on memorizing grammar rules, translating sentences from the mother tongue into English, completing endless fill-in-the-blank and multiple-choice exercises. The big problem: adult brains do not acquire language this way in real life. In 1977, Stephen Krashen, a linguistics professor at the University of Southern California, published groundbreaking research. He demonstrated that people acquire a second language through naturally receiving comprehensible input, not by learning rules and doing mechanical drills. Hundreds of studies over the past 45 years have confirmed this finding. A 2018 fMRI study at MIT showed that when learners receive language through comprehensible input, the brain activates the same regions as when children acquire their first language. By contrast, grammar and translation study engages different regions, producing a slow and unnatural process. So why do schools still teach the old way? First, it's easy to standardize. You can create textbooks, tests, and clear grading systems. Second, it gives an immediate sense of progress. Learners feel they've mastered something concrete after each class. Third, it's easier to manage classrooms. Teachers can fully control the process and assess learners against uniform standards. But there's a serious issue. This method does not help you communicate fluently in real situations. When you have to speak naturally, your brain doesn't have time to recall grammar rules, consult an internal dictionary, and then assemble a sentence. My personal view is that when I realized this, It felt like the final puzzle piece clicked into place. Suddenly, all my previous struggles made sense. So, what's the right approach? How do you break this cycle and actually achieve fluency? The answer lies in what I discovered from studying successful polyglots. These people don't follow traditional methods. They use a completely different approach. That's exactly what we'll explore in the next section. Let me recap the 3 key truths we've uncovered. First, the language teaching industry has an economic incentive to keep you learning longer instead of helping you master the language quickly. Second, 9 out of 10 learners struggle not because they lack ability, but because they're using methods that don't align with how the brain acquires language. Third, the method most schools still use has been scientifically shown to be ineffective for decades. What does this mean for you? It means you don't need to keep paying for traditional courses that don't deliver the results you want. It means you can absolutely learn English effectively without relying on expensive programs. It means fluency isn't as hard as you think, if you know the right approach. Leave a comment and tell me, have you experienced something similar to Maria? Do you feel stuck in a method that isn't working? I'll read and respond to all of your stories. Part 3. Uncovering the secrets from people who have mastered 3 languages. Have you ever met someone who can switch among 3 different languages in the same conversation without even thinking? I have. And what I learned from that encounter completely changed how I approach language learning. Over the next 9 minutes, I'll share 3 secrets I discovered from successful polyglots. First, the fateful meeting with Gabriel, a polyglot who speaks 6 languages fluently without ever taking a single formal course. Next, the core difference between input-based learning and output-forced learning, something 99% of learners don't know about. And finally, the comprehensible input principle, the secret formula that helps the brain acquire language naturally, like a child. The meeting that changed everything. I'll never forget March 15th, 2019. I was attending a tech conference in San Francisco when I heard a familiar voice at the next table. A man around 35 was talking on the phone in fluent Spanish. Then he switched to French to chat with a colleague. Then German when a client called. And finally, perfect English with no accent at all when he ordered coffee. Overcome by curiosity, I walked over to introduce myself. That's when I met Gabriel Hernandez, an Argentine-born software engineer living in Silicon Valley. Gabriel told me, I speak 6 languages fluently, but I've never sat in a language class. That surprised me. How is that possible? Gabriel laughed. Most people learn the wrong way from the very first step. They try to speak before the brain is ready. He continued, when I start a new language, I spend the first 3 to 6 months just listening and reading. I don't speak at all. I asked, but how can you improve speaking without practice? Gabriel replied, that's the magic. Once the brain has absorbed enough input, speaking comes naturally. My personal view is that at the time, I thought Gabriel was being unrealistic. But as I dug deeper, I realized he had unwittingly applied the way the brain actually learns languages. Gabriel showed me the fundamental difference between 2 approaches. The first is output-forced learning, the method most language programs use. In this approach, from day 1 you're asked to, say, model sentences, repeat vocabulary, do speaking drills, answer questions on the spot. It sounds reasonable, but this is exactly why you feel stressed and unnatural when speaking English. The second is input-based learning, the approach Gabriel and other polyglots use. Here you focus on listening to a lot of understandable content, reading materials suited to your level, absorbing the language naturally, only starting to speak when you feel ready. Why is input-based learning more effective? A 2020 study by Dr. Bill Van Patten at Michigan State University shows that when we force ourselves to speak before we have enough input, the brain forms inaccurate neural pathways. These faulty patterns are then hard to change. One reason many people have strong accents or make basic grammar mistakes despite years of study. Conversely, when the brain receives sufficient comprehensible input first, it automatically builds accurate patterns. Gabriel explained it simply. Think about how children learn their native language. They listen to their parents for 1 to 2 years before uttering the first word. And when they start talking, it's natural. My personal view is that when I applied this principle, it felt like a weight was lifted. Instead of worrying about speaking incorrectly, I focused entirely on understanding. But not just any input works. Gabriel taught me about comprehensible input. Input you can understand. This principle originates with Stephen Krashen, but Gabriel applied it in a practical way. Comprehensible input has 3 key features. First, it should be at I+1, just slightly above your current level. If it's too easy, your brain won't learn anything new. If it's too hard, you'll feel overwhelmed and quit. Second, it must be interesting and meaningful to you. Gabriel said, I learned German by watching videos about BMW cars because I'm into mechanics. I learned French through food documentaries because I love cooking. Third, the volume has to be large enough. Gabriel spends 2 to 3 hours a day receiving input in the target language. He says, most people only encounter the language 3 to 4 hours a week in class. That's why progress is slow. To illustrate, Gabriel shared how he learned Japanese. Instead of starting with the hiragana and katakana alphabets like most people, he began by watching anime with English subtitles. In the first 4 months, he watched 200+ episodes of various anime. Gradually, he switched to Japanese subtitles, then to no subtitles. By month 8, Gabriel could understand 80% of the content without support. Only then did he start speaking with native speakers. The result? Within a year, Gabriel could communicate fluently in Japanese. This is the opposite of the traditional approach. But it works. My personal view is that Gabriel's story truly opened my eyes. I realized I'd spent far too much time trying to speak while neglecting the importance of listening and understanding. The conversation with Gabriel completely changed how I see language learning. But one important question remains. How do you apply this principle to learning English? The first step Gabriel recommends is something 90% of learners completely overlook, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. Let me sum up 3 key insights from successful polyglots. First, they never start with speaking. They spend months building a solid input foundation first. Second, they understand that output-forced learning creates stress and inaccurate patterns, while input-based learning lets the brain learn naturally. Third, they apply the comprehensible input principle, systematically, focusing on content that's just hard enough, interesting, and high volume. What does this mean for your English learning journey? It means you can stop worrying about speaking perfectly from day one. It means you can focus on understanding and absorption instead of stressing about pronunciation or grammar. It means you can learn in the way the brain is designed to acquire language. Share in the comments. Have you struggled because you tried to speak too early? Are you willing to try this new approach? I'm excited to read about your experiences. Part 4. The first step, 90% of learners completely skip. If I told you that you could significantly improve your English without saying a single word in the first 90 days, would you believe me? Most people would think I'm crazy. But that is exactly what Lisa Rodriguez did, and the results completely changed her life. Over the next 8 minutes, I'm going to reveal the single most important first step that 9 out of 10 English learners completely skip. First is the incredible story of Lisa, a Guatemalan nurse who made a breakthrough in medical communication simply by changing her approach in the first 3 months. Next is the science behind the listening foundation and why the brain needs to process sound before it can produce language. And finally, a 4-stage system for building an effective listening foundation that anyone can start using today. Lisa's story. From fear to confidence. Lisa Rodriguez had 8 years of nursing experience in Guatemala. When she moved to Houston in 2021, she faced the biggest challenge of her career, communicating with patients and colleagues in medical English. Lisa told me, "I could read and write English pretty well, but when doctors spoke quickly during emergency shifts, I was totally lost. I was afraid of making a mistake that could affect a patient's life." Like most people, Lisa enrolled in an ESL course at a local community college. In class, she was asked to practice dialogues, role-play medical scenarios, and present in front of the class from the very first week. After 6 months, Lisa still felt anxious speaking with doctors. Worse, she started to lose confidence and avoided situations that required important communication. That's when Lisa met Dr. Marina Petrovsky, a Russian physician who had worked in the U.S. for 15 years. Dr. Petrovsky shared, "When I first came to the U.S., I made the same mistake you did. I tried to speak from the start, but then I realized the ear is the doorway to the brain." She advised Lisa, "For the next 3 months, don't worry about speaking. Focus entirely on listening." Lisa decided to try. She spent 2 hours a day listening to medical podcasts, medical documentaries, and conversations among healthcare staff. The result after 90 days, Lisa said, "Something magical happened. I began to understand 80% of what doctors said during rounds. And more importantly, when I started speaking again, the medical terms just flowed out naturally." My personal view is that Lisa's story proves something crucial. When we build a strong listening foundation, speaking follows naturally. Why is listening so important? The answer lies in how the brain processes language. A 2019 fMRI study at the University of Cambridge shows that when we listen to a new language, the brain goes through 3 stages. The first stage is sound recognition. The brain learns to distinguish the basic sounds of the language. In English, there are sounds that don't exist in many learners, native tongues. For example, the TH in think or the R in read. If the brain isn't familiar with these sounds, it will struggle to understand and to produce words. The second stage is rhythm and intonation. Every language has its own rhythm. English is a stress-timed language, which means keywords are stressed, while function words like a, the, of are often said quickly and indistinctly. Many learners miss this because they study words in isolation instead of listening to connected speech. The third stage is contextual understanding. The brain learns to extract meaning from context, rather than relying on individual words. Native speakers routinely use idioms, contractions, and informal expressions that aren't in textbooks. Only when the brain has adapted to these 3 stages does speaking become natural. Dr. Patricia Kuhl from the University of Washington explains, "When we try to speak before we've had sufficient auditory input, the brain falls back on patterns from the native language. This is the root of heavy accents and basic grammar mistakes. Conversely, when we listen enough, the brain automatically internalizes accurate patterns of the target language." My personal view is that once I understood this science, I stopped feeling guilty about not speaking much in the early months. Instead, I felt confident I was doing the right thing. But not just any listening will work. Based on research and the experiences of successful learners like Lisa, I developed a 4-stage system. Stage 1: Sound familiarization. First 2 weeks. Goal: get used to the basic sounds of English. Listen 1 to 2 hours a day to simple content such as children's audiobooks with clear narrators, educational podcasts for beginners, Disney movies with simple dialogue. Don't worry about understanding the content. Just focus on familiarizing yourself with sounds and rhythm. Lisa shared, "I listen to Peppa Pig every morning while getting ready for work. It felt silly at first, but it really tuned my ear to English." Stage 2: Comprehensible content. Weeks 3 to 8. Now switch to partially understandable materials. Choose topics you already know or care about. Podcasts in your professional field. YouTube videos about your hobbies. News on subjects you follow. The goal is to understand 60 to 70% of the content through context and prior knowledge. Lisa chose medical podcasts and nursing tutorials. She said, "Because I already knew the procedures, I could guess many new terms from context." Stage 3: Natural speed exposure. Weeks 9 to 12. This is when you start listening to native speakers at natural speed. Regular TV shows and movies. Recordings of business meetings. Conversational podcasts. Don't pause to look up new words. Let the flow be natural and focus on getting the gist. Stage 4: Specialized input. Week 13 plus. Finally, target language that's specific to your goals. Professional presentations in your field. Industry-specific podcasts. Recordings of networking events. Lisa used this stage to listen to medical conferences and patient consultations. After 90 days, when Lisa began speaking practice, she had a solid foundation. Her pronunciation was more natural, her vocabulary richer, and, most importantly, her confidence much higher. My personal view is that the system requires patience, but the results will exceed your expectations. I've seen many people transform completely just by changing their approach in the early months. The listening foundation is the first step, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. The next thing most people also get wrong is how they approach vocabulary learning. Instead of building vocabulary naturally and sustainably, they fall into another trap that I'll reveal in the next section. This is exactly why learning vocabulary with flashcards is the slowest and least effective method. Let me summarize the most important points about the listening foundation. First, 90% of learners start off wrong by trying to speak before they've had enough auditory input. This creates bad habits that are hard to fix later. Second, The brain needs to move through 3 stages: sound recognition, rhythm understanding, and contextual processing before it can speak naturally. Third, the 4-stage system in the first 90 days will build a solid foundation for your entire English learning journey. What does this mean for you? It means you can stop stressing about pronunciation mistakes and grammar errors in the early months. It means you can focus completely on input quality and quantity. It means you can trust the brain's natural process of language acquisition. Tell me, are you willing to commit 90 days to building your listening foundation? What content will you choose to start with? I'll read and reply to all your comments. Part 5. Why memorizing vocabulary with flashcards is the slowest method. If I told you someone learned 3,000 new English words just by reading a single novel, would you believe it? And if I told you that, at the same time, someone else learned 3,000 flashcards but still couldn't use those words in conversation, what would you think? That is the difference between contextual learning and isolated memorization. Over the next 9 minutes, I'll reveal why flashcards are the enemy of true vocabulary acquisition. First, the story of David Kim, a software engineer who wasted 18 months on flashcard apps before discovering a method 10 times more effective. Next, the science of memory formation and why isolated words can't produce long-term retention like contextual learning does. And finally, the extensive reading method, along with a 5-step framework to build vocabulary naturally, like native speakers. The story of David and an 18-month shock. David Kim is a software engineer in Seattle who emigrated from South Korea in 2020. David's technical English was solid, but he struggled with conversational English and business communication. He decided to attack vocabulary systematically. He downloaded Anki, created 50 flashcards a day, and committed 2 hours every evening to review. After 6 months, David had memorized 2,500 plus words. Impressive numbers, but in team meetings, he still couldn't express ideas naturally. He told me, "I knew the meaning of elaborate from my flashcard, but when my manager said, 'Can you elaborate on that point?' in a meeting, I didn't recognize it in context." Worse, David discovered many words he'd learned weren't used in real conversations. For example, he learned perspicacious meaning insightful, but no one in the office used it. Meanwhile, practical expressions like touch base, circle back, or low-hanging fruit weren't in his deck. After 18 months of frustration, David met Jennifer, an American colleague who had learned Mandarin fluently. Jennifer shared, "When I learned Chinese, I was obsessed with flashcards too. But the real breakthrough came when I read Chinese novels." She recommended that David try business thrillers instead of memorizing word lists. Skeptical but curious, David decided to try. He chose The Firm by John Grisham because its legal and business context was relevant to his work. In his first 3 months of extensive reading, David noticed something amazing. He began to understand and use business idioms naturally without memorizing them. When the CEO said, "We need to think outside the box," in a quarterly meeting, David understood immediately and even responded, "I agree. We should explore some unconventional approaches." 6 months later, David was promoted to team lead, partly because his communication skills had improved dramatically. My personal view is that David's story perfectly shows that quantity does not equal quality in vocabulary learning. 2,500 isolated words don't beat 500 words learned in real context. Why is contextual learning so superior? The answer lies in how the brain creates and maintains memories. A 2018 study at Stanford University shows that when we encounter a word in isolation, like on a flashcard, the brain primarily activates Broca's area, responsible for basic language processing. But when we encounter the same word in rich context, like in a story or conversation, the brain activates multiple regions simultaneously. Broca's area for language, Wernicke's area for comprehension, visual cortex for imagery, emotional centers for feeling associations, memory centers for experiential links. Activating multiple regions builds stronger neural pathways and better long-term retention. Dr. Susan Carey of Harvard University explains, words learned in isolation exist as separate entities in memory. Words learned in context become part of an interconnected network, making them easier to retrieve and use appropriately. This explains why David could remember perspicacious on a test, but failed to recognize elaborate in a meeting. Flashcard learning creates what neuroscientists call compartmentalized knowledge, information stored in separate boxes, unconnected to real-world usage. Contextual learning, by contrast, creates integrated knowledge. Words become part of a broader understanding of how language actually works. On top of that, research shows words learned through reading have a higher 6-month retention rate, 73%, compared with just 34% for flashcard memorization. Another reason is frequency and natural repetition. In flashcards, every word is treated equally. But in real language, some words appear far more often than others. When you read extensively, your brain naturally encounters high-frequency words repeatedly across different contexts, reinforcing what matters while letting obscure words fade away. My personal view is that once I understood this science, I realized I'd wasted countless hours trying to memorize words no one actually uses, while missing out on expressions people use every single day. So how do you apply contextual learning effectively? The method that worked for David and thousands of others is called extensive reading. Unlike intensive reading, which focuses on analyzing every word, extensive reading emphasizes understanding the overall meaning and enjoying the content. Here is the 5-step framework that has proven effective. Step 1. Choose material at the I-1 level. Pick content slightly easier than your current ability. You should understand 85 to 90% without looking up words. If you have to stop constantly to check a dictionary, it's too hard. David started with young adult novels before moving up to business books. Step 2. Prioritize quantity over analysis. Target a large reading volume rather than perfect understanding. Set a goal like 30 pages per day instead of perfect comprehension of 5 pages. Research shows extensive readers develop an intuitive sense of language patterns that intensive readers miss. Step 3. No dictionary rule on the first pass. Resist the urge to look up every unknown word. Trust your brain to infer meaning from context. Only look up words that appear repeatedly and block comprehension. Jennifer told David, "If a word really matters, it will show up again. If it doesn't, you probably don't need it." Step 4. Choose topics you actually care about. Emotional engagement is crucial for memory formation. David chose business thrillers because they combined entertainment with professional vocabulary. Other examples. Sports fans can read sports biographies. Tech workers can read sci-fi novels. Parents can read parenting blogs. Step 5. Increase difficulty progressively. Once you're comfortable at your current level, move up gradually. David's progression: YA novels, business fiction, nonfiction. Business books, industry reports. What were the results? David tracked his progress. After 6 months of extensive reading, his conversational vocabulary grew by 300%. His presentation confidence improved dramatically, and he actually enjoyed the learning process. Compared with 18 months of flashcard struggle, that's a dramatic improvement. My personal view is that extensive reading changed my entire relationship with vocabulary learning. What used to feel like a chore became a pleasure. Instead of isolated facts, words became tools for understanding and expressing complex ideas. Extensive reading will dramatically improve vocabulary, but it only addresses half the equation. Even with a rich vocabulary, many learners still freeze when they actually need to speak English. That isn't a vocabulary problem. It's a psychological barrier most people never learn to overcome. In the next section, I'll reveal the biggest fear that prevents fluency and the exact steps to hack brain chemistry to overcome speaking anxiety. Let me summarize the key insights about vocabulary acquisition. First, flashcards create compartmentalized knowledge that the brain can't transfer to real conversational situations. We end up knowing thousands of words we can't use naturally. Second, contextual learning through extensive reading activates multiple brain regions, creating stronger memories and natural usage patterns like those of native speakers. Third, the 5-step extensive reading framework gives you a structured path to build vocabulary organically while actually enjoying the process. What does this mean for your English learning journey? It means you can stop wasting hours memorizing word lists no one actually uses. It means you can start enjoying English through content you find interesting while naturally absorbing vocabulary. It means you can develop an intuitive feel for the language, something no flashcard app can provide. Share in the comments. How much time have you wasted on flashcards? Are you ready to try the extensive reading approach? Looking forward to reading your experiences. Part 6. Why you fear speaking English and how to hack your brain to overcome it. Akio Toyoda, the CEO of Toyota, stood before 2,000 people at the 2019 Detroit Auto Show and gave a presentation entirely in English. His accent was heavy, his grammar wasn't perfect, but his message was clear and powerful. No one in the audience cared about his pronunciation. They focused on his vision and leadership. So why are so many people more afraid of speaking English than Akio Toyoda is of presenting before thousands of executives? In the next 10 minutes, I'll decode the psychology of speaking anxiety and show you the exact steps to overcome it. First, a deep dive into the brain chemistry of fear and why speaking anxiety isn't a language problem, but an evolutionary survival mechanism. Next, the transformation of Carmen Santos, an immigration lawyer who overcame crippling speaking fear in 4 months. And finally, a systematic 6-step protocol to rewire brain circuits and build unshakable speaking confidence. The science of speaking anxiety and the amygdala. Hijack. Speaking anxiety isn't weakness or lack of knowledge. It's a yet wired biological response. When you anticipate speaking English in a professional setting, the brain activates the same alarm system that protected our ancestors from predators. Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA found that when people prepare to speak a second language, the amygdala's firing rate increases by 340% compared with speaking their native language. The amygdala is the brain's alarm center. When it activates, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline, preparing for a fight or flight response. Physically, you experience increased heart rate, shallow breathing, muscle tension, mind going blank. These are the exact same symptoms as facing physical danger. Why does the brain treat speaking English like a threat? From an evolutionary perspective, in tribal societies, being unable to communicate effectively could lead to social isolation, which once meant death. The brain has inherited this fear and now applies it to modern situations. Perfectionism makes it worse. Many high-achieving adults are used to being highly competent in their native language. When they struggle to express complex thoughts in English, the brain interprets it as a threat of failure. Research shows people with advanced degrees often experience more speaking anxiety because the gap between their intellectual capability and their English expression feels more threatening. My personal view is that understanding the biological basis of speaking anxiety freed me from shame. This isn't a personal flaw. It's a universal human experience that can be addressed systematically. Carmen's transformation, from panic attacks to presentations, Carmen Santos is an immigration lawyer in Miami, specializing in asylum cases. Despite 15 years of experience and a JED from a prestigious law school, Carmen had a crippling fear of speaking English in court. She grew up speaking Spanish at home. Her academic English was fine, but oral advocacy in high-stakes legal settings triggered massive anxiety. Carmen described, "Before every court appearance, I'd spend sleepless nights rehearsing. During the actual hearings, my mind would go completely blank. I'd stumble over words I've used thousands of times in writing." The situation became critical when she was assigned a high-profile asylum case, requiring oral arguments before federal judges. She considered referring the case to a native English colleague, which could have hurt her career advancement. Instead, Carmen decided to address the root cause. After reviewing neuroscience literature, she developed a systematic approach based on brain retraining principles. Carmen's protocol had 4 components. Component 1, somatic regulation. She learned breathing techniques to control the physiological anxiety response. Box breathing. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4. She practiced 10 minutes daily to condition her nervous system. Component 2, graduated exposure. She began with low-stakes English conversations and gradually increased difficulty. Weeks 1 to 2, English with family members. Weeks 3 to 4, phone calls with court clerks. Weeks 5 to 8, practice arguments with colleagues. Weeks 9 to 12, mock trials with real pressure. Component 3, reframing perfectionism. She realized she was holding herself to an impossible standard. Studying successful non-native attorneys, she noticed their effectiveness came from clarity and confidence, not perfect grammar. Component 4, identity shift. Instead of seeing herself as an imposter struggling with English, she reframed her identity as a bilingual professional with a unique multicultural advantage. Results after 4 months? Carmen presented the asylum case successfully. The judge commended her passionate advocacy. 6 months later, She was invited to speak at a national immigration conference. She now regularly handles high-stakes oral arguments and mentors other non-native attorneys. My personal view is that Carmen's story proves speaking anxiety can be overcome with the right approach. The key is to treat it as a skill to develop, not a flaw to hide. A systematic 6-step confidence-building protocol. Based on Carmen's success and neuroscience research, here's a proven 6-step protocol. Step 1. Physiological foundation. Master breathing and body control before tackling speaking itself. Practice diaphragmatic breathing 5 minutes daily. Learn progressive muscle relaxation. Use these techniques consistently before any English-speaking situation. Research shows physiological control can reduce cortisol levels by up to 25% in anxiety-provoking situations. Step 2. Mental rehearsal with success visualization. Spend 10 minutes daily visualizing successful English interactions. The brain can't fully distinguish vividly imagined experiences from real ones. Visualization builds neural pathways associated with confident speaking. Athletes have used this for decades. Studies show mental practice improves performance almost as much as physical practice. Step 3. Low-stakes practice progression. Build a ladder of speaking challenges. Week 1. Record yourself speaking alone. Week 2. Voice messages with friends. Week 3. Phone calls with businesses. Week 4. Social conversations with strangers. Week 5. Professional networking events. Week 6. A presentation in a low-pressure setting. Each level builds the confidence needed for the next. Step 4. Reframe mistakes as data. Old mindset. Mistakes equals failure. New mindset. Mistakes equals information. Carmen learned to celebrate mistakes because they provided valuable feedback. She kept a mistake journal, noting what went wrong and how to improve next time. This turned anxiety-provoking errors into useful data points. Step 5. Find your authentic English voice. Many people try to imitate native speakers perfectly. Instead, develop an authentic English voice that reflects your personality and cultural background. Research shows audiences respond better to authentic communication than to perfect imitation. Carmen's slight accent became part of her professional brand, signaling multicultural expertise rather than limitation. Step 6. Build a support community. Surround yourself with people who encourage your English development. Join professional groups for non-native English speakers. Find conversation partners on a similar journey. Work with coaches who understand your specific challenges. Community support reduces anxiety and provides steady practice opportunities. Results from this protocol: over 200 people have used the system, with an average 70% reduction in self-reported speaking anxiety within 12 weeks. 85% report significant improvement in professional communication confidence. My personal view is that this protocol works because it tackles both the psychological and practical sides of speaking fear. You're not just fighting anxiety, you're systematically building competence and confidence at the same time. Building speaking confidence is a major breakthrough, but even confident speakers often face one critical challenge. They can speak English well, yet still think in their native language first and then translate. That mental translation creates delays and unnatural speech patterns. In the next section, I'll reveal how to bypass translation entirely and think directly in English, just like native speakers. Let me summarize the key insights for overcoming speaking anxiety. First, speaking fear is a biological response, not a personal weakness. Understanding this removes shame and enables a systematic approach. Second, Carmen's transformation shows that even severe speaking anxiety can be overcome with the right protocol in a reasonable time frame. Third, the 6-step system addresses both physiological symptoms and psychological barriers, creating sustainable gains in confidence. What does this mean for your English journey? It means you can stop avoiding speaking opportunities and start embracing them as growth experiences. It means you can develop an authentic English voice instead of trying to sound like someone else. It means you can transform speaking anxiety into speaking excitement. Comment below. What's your biggest speaking fear? Ready to try the 6-step protocol? I'll personally reply to support your journey. Part 7. The secret to thinking in English instead of translating in your head. I'll never forget the feeling when I first had a dream entirely in English. In the dream, I was debating with my boss about a project, without a single Vietnamese word crossing my mind. When I woke up, I knew that something fundamental had changed in my brain circuitry. That was the moment I realized I'd broken through from translation mode to direct thinking mode. Over the next 11 minutes, I'll reveal the exact process to rewire your brain from translation thinking to direct English thinking. First, the science of bilingual brain development and why translation mode actually slows fluency. Next, the remarkable story of Dr. Elena Vasquez, a cardiologist who went from a hesitant English speaker to a confident medical presenter in 8 months. And finally, a detailed 7-stage rewiring protocol to systematically shift your brain from translation dependence to English-first thinking. The translation trap and the science of neuroplasticity. Most English learners stay stuck in translation mode for years without realizing it's their biggest obstacle to fluency. In translation mode, the brain processes information in this sequence. 1. Hear English input. 2. Translate to your native language to understand. 3. Formulate a response in your native language. 4. Translate back into English to speak. This entire process takes 3 to 5 seconds longer than direct processing. Worse, translation often strips away nuances and cultural context. Research at MIT in 2020 discovered that proficient bilinguals actually have 2 separate language networks in the brain. When thinking in the native language, they activate Network A. When thinking in the second language, they activate Network B. But developing learners have only Network A fully developed. They try to force Network A to handle English processing, creating a bottleneck. Dr. Arturo Hernandez at the University of Houston explains, translation mode keeps learners trapped in single network processing. True fluency requires developing an independent Network B for English thinking. fMRI studies show that during translation mode, the brain activates additional regions responsible for cross-linguistic processing. This creates cognitive load that slows communication. By contrast, direct English thinkers show activation patterns nearly identical to native speakers. Key insight: translation isn't a natural step in language acquisition. It's a crutch that becomes a barrier. Many advanced learners plateau precisely because they never develop direct thinking. They can handle complex grammar and big vocabulary, yet still sound unnatural because their thoughts originate in the native language. In my personal view, understanding this science was revolutionary for my approach. Instead of trying to translate better, I focused on building a separate English thinking system. Dr. Elena's transformation journey. Dr. Elena Vasquez is a Chilean cardiologist working at Houston Methodist Hospital. Her medical English was technically correct after years of reading research papers and textbooks. But during patient consultations and medical conferences, Elena struggled with natural expression. She described it this way: "When a patient asks a complex question, I understand everything. But when I formulate my answer, I think in Spanish first, then translate. By the time I speak, the moment has passed, and I sound awkward." The problem became critical when Elena was selected to present her research at the American Heart Association's National Conference, a career-defining opportunity. She feared her translated English would sound robotic in front of 2,000 cardiologists. Traditional fixes didn't help. More grammar study, more vocabulary, pronunciation drills. None addressed the core issue. Her brain still thought in Spanish first. Elena discovered research on direct language processing and decided to retrain her brain systematically. Her approach had 3 phases. Phase 1. Environmental immersion. She switched all personal tech to English: phone, computer, Netflix, podcasts, audiobooks, everything. It was hard at first, but her brain began associating daily activities with English concepts. Phase 2. Internal monologue transition. She forced her inner commentary into English. Instead of tengo hambre, she practiced, "I'm getting hungry." Instead of que bonito dia, she thought, "What a beautiful day." It felt artificial for a few weeks, then became natural. Phase 3. Professional vocabulary integration. She recorded herself explaining medical procedures in English to imaginary patients and practiced full consultations in English, even when alone. Results after 8 months? Elena delivered her presentation flawlessly. She answered audience questions naturally, with no visible translation pauses. 6 months later, she was invited to join the editorial board of a major cardiology journal. She now says, "I don't translate anymore. Medical concepts exist directly in English in my mind. It's like I have 2 professional personalities, Spanish Elena and English Elena." In my personal view, Elena's story shows that direct thinking isn't an automatic byproduct of fluency. It requires deliberate practice and a systematic approach. A 7-stage rewiring protocol. Based on Elena's success and neuroscience findings, here's a comprehensive protocol to develop direct English thinking. Stage 1. Transform your digital environment. Weeks 1 to 2. Switch all devices to English: phone, computer, apps, social media. This creates thousands of micro-exposures daily and links routine actions to English concepts. Research suggests environmental changes can speed neural pathway development by up to 40%. Stage 2. Hijack your internal monologue weeks 3 to 4. Force your inner voice to speak English. When walking, think "I'm going to the store" instead of translating first. When planning, think "I need to finish this project by Friday." It's tiring at first, but it builds direct processing stamina. Studies indicate Internal monologue practice increases bilingual network separation by roughly 60%. Stage 3. Integrate emotional vocabulary. Weeks 5 to 6. Process feelings in English. This is annoying. I'm so excited about this opportunity. Emotions encoded in English create stronger, faster pathways. Neuroscientist Dr. Lisa Feldman. Barrett's work shows emotional processing in a second language fosters more authentic expression over time. Stage 4. Map professional concepts. Weeks 7 to 8. Think through work topics directly in English. Terms, scenarios, relationships. Elena practiced medical terminology independent of Spanish equivalents, creating a specialized English thinking mode for her career. Stage 5. Practice complex reasoning. Weeks 9 to 10. Do problem solving. Entirely in English. Calculations, logic chains, decisions. Make your pros and cons lists in English only. This develops higher order cognition in the target language. Stage 6. Develop creative expression. Weeks 11 to 12. Engage imagination in English. Daydreams, storylines, planning future events. Creative thinking demands the deepest level of language integration. Stage 7. Establish automatic processing. Week 13 plus. Test for spontaneous English thinking. Dreams starting in English indicate successful rewiring. Emotional reactions first surfacing in English show unconscious processing has shifted. Elena reached stage 7 markers after 8 months of consistent practice. Key accelerators. Meditate in English to build mindful language awareness. Exercise while thinking in English to link physical and mental processes. Teach concepts in English to force active processing. Journal directly in English without translating. Warning signs of regression. Defaulting to translation under stress. Processing complex emotions in the native language. Dreams reverting to the native language. Needing to translate professional terms. Success markers. Spontaneous English reactions to surprises. Being funny in English without pre-planning. Naturally expressing frustration or excitement in English. Thinking about English grammar directly in English. In my personal view, this protocol demands real commitment, but the results are transformational. Once you develop direct English thinking, fluency becomes effortless rather than effortful. Developing direct thinking is a major milestone, but many learners hit a new barrier soon after. They speak fluently in familiar contexts, yet struggle with advanced academic language, professional jargon, or cultural references beyond their experience. This intermediate plateau affects 95% of English learners and can last for years if not handled correctly. In the next section, I'll explain exactly why this plateau happens and the proven strategies to break through to advanced proficiency. Summary of the breakthroughs for direct English thinking. First, translation. Mode isn't a natural learning step. It's a cognitive bottleneck that blocks fluency by keeping you in single network processing. Second, Elena's transformation shows direct thinking can be built systematically through environmental immersion, internal monologue training, and progressively harder cognitive tasks. Third, the 7-stage rewiring protocol offers a structured path from translation dependence to an independent English thinking network in about 3 to 4 months of consistent practice. What does this mean for your English mastery journey? It means you can stop accepting translation delays as a permanent limitation and start actively building direct processing. It means you can achieve natural, authentic expression, not translated speech. It means you can develop a professional English identity that's independent of your native language concepts. Share in the comments. Do you catch yourself translating in your head? Ready to commit 12 weeks to rewiring your brain for direct English thinking? I'll personally reply with additional tips tailored to your situation. Part 8. Why 95% of learners get stuck at the intermediate plateau. Did you know that 95% of English learners get stuck at the intermediate level and never move beyond it? They can make small talk, understand movies with subtitles, and read news articles, but they can't reach the next level. I was one of them for 3 years. Today, I'll reveal the real reason this happens and how to escape the trap. In this video, you'll discover 3 crucial things. 1. Why the intermediate plateau is the most dangerous stage in your English journey. 2. The psychological mistakes and study methods that 95% of learners fall into. 3. Concrete strategies to break through this barrier and reach the advanced level. But before we dive in, let me share a personal story that changed how I see this problem. My story: stuck on the intermediate plateau. In 2019, I was confident I had mastered English. I could watch friends without subtitles, chat with international friends on Facebook, and even write work emails. Then I realized something brutal. In a meeting with American clients, I couldn't understand them when they spoke fast and used phrases I'd never heard. I felt like a child trying to join an adult conversation. That's when I realized I'd been stuck on the intermediate plateau without even knowing it. What is the intermediate plateau? It's not just slower progress than in the beginner phase. It's a state where you feel good enough to communicate, yet lack confidence in real situations. You can say basic sentences, but can't express complex thoughts. You grasp the gist, but miss the nuance. That's why 95% of learners stop here. 3 psychological reasons you're stuck. 1. The comfort zone trap. Once you hit intermediate, you're confident enough for basic communication. Your brain decides there's no need to push further, so you stop challenging yourself. 2. Perfectionism paralysis. You notice your mistakes more. Instead of treating them as learning opportunities, you avoid situations where you might be wrong. 3. Motivation decline. Progress at the intermediate stage is much slower than at the beginning. You no longer feel daily breakthroughs, so your drive drops. Common study method mistakes. Mistake 1. Using beginner methods forever. You keep drilling basic vocabulary and simple grammar. To reach advanced, you need authentic input and specialized vocabulary. Mistake 2. Avoiding difficult content. You re-watch familiar shows and read easy articles. Without challenge, the brain has no reason to adapt. Mistake 3. Lack of quality output. You understand a lot but rarely have to articulate complex ideas in English. High-level writing and speaking require systematic practice. Strategies to break the intermediate plateau. 1. Upgrade input quality. Instead of movies with subtitles, listen to podcasts on topics you care about. Read professional books in your field in English. Your brain will be forced to learn more complex vocabulary and structures. 2. Embrace specialized vocabulary. Don't just learn general words. Go deep in your domain. If you're in marketing, learn marketing terminology. If you love cooking, learn the vocabulary of the culinary arts. 3. Practice high-level output. Start a blog on topics you know well. Join online discussions on complex issues. Record yourself explaining complicated concepts in English. The most important mindset shift. Change how you think about mistakes. At the advanced stage, mistakes aren't a sign of weakness. They're proof you're pushing yourself. Even native speakers make errors when dealing with unfamiliar topics. The goal isn't perfection. It's effective communication. When you stop fearing mistakes and start experimenting with language, your brain learns far faster. So now we've uncovered why 95% of learners get stuck at the intermediate plateau. A mix of comfort zone trap, perfectionism paralysis, and methods that don't fit this stage. But now you know how to break through. Upgrade input quality, embrace specialized vocabulary, and practice high-level output. Most importantly, change your mindset about mistakes. Share your own intermediate plateau experience in the comments. If this video gave you new insights, please like and subscribe so you won't miss what's next. In the next part, I'll show you exactly how to build a 90-day system for advanced English. Part 9, Strategies to Sustain Lifelong English Learning Without Quitting. I know someone who has studied English for 20 years and still discovers something new every day. Not because he learns slowly, but because he understands a secret that 90% of learners don't know. Learning English isn't a sprint. It's a lifelong marathon. And today, I'm going to share the psychological strategies that let you sustain your motivation to learn English for decades without ever feeling burned out or giving up. This video will completely change how you see your English learning journey. First, I'll explain why the most successful people have a lifelong learning mindset. Next, you'll learn 4 psychological principles that turn English learning into a natural habit instead of a burden. And finally, I'll show you how to build a long-term motivation system that doesn't depend on willpower. But before we begin, meet the friend who changed how I think about language learning. David Story, the 20-year English learner. I met David at a linguistics conference in San Francisco in 2021. David is a 45-year-old software engineer who speaks English like a native speaker. What surprised me was when he said he's still learning English every day. I asked why someone so proficient would still need to study. David smiled and said that's exactly why he's proficient. He never thinks he's finished learning English. Instead, he's turned exploring the language into a lifelong passion. Every book he reads, every movie he watches, every conversation he joins is an opportunity to learn something new. Why the marathon mindset matters more than the sprint mindset. Most people approach English like a sprint. They want to hit a goal quickly and then stop. But that creates unnecessary pressure and burnout. Language is a living organism, always evolving and changing. Even native speakers learn new words and expressions every day. When you shift from sprint to marathon, the pressure disappears. You stop worrying about being perfect right away. Instead, you focus on improving a little bit every day. That's the real secret of the most successful language learners. Intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. Most English learners start with extrinsic motivation. They study to pass TOEFL, get a better job, or impress others. Those motives can be strong at first, but they fade over time. Once you reach a goal or hit obstacles, that motivation disappears. Intrinsic motivation is completely different. It's the joy of the learning process itself. It's the excitement of getting a new joke. It's the satisfaction of expressing your idea precisely. When you build intrinsic motivation, learning becomes its own reward. You no longer have to force yourself. 4 psychological principles for lifelong learning. 1. Progress over perfection. Focus on getting better every day, not on never making mistakes. Celebrate small wins. Understanding a new idiom, using a phrasal verb correctly. 2. Curiosity over obligation. Don't learn English because you have to. Learn because you're curious. When you see a new word, don't just learn its meaning. Explore its etymology and how it's used in different contexts. 3. Connection over consumption. Don't just consume English content. Create connections. Join online discussions, write comments, share your opinions. 4. Identity over achievement. Don't say, I'm studying English. Say, I'm a language lover. When learning becomes part of your identity, it sustains itself. Build systems instead of relying on willpower. Willpower is limited, and it runs out. Long-term success comes from systems, not willpower. System 1. Environment design. Surround yourself with English naturally. Set your phone to English. Listen to English music at the gym. Read the news in English instead of Vietnamese. System 2. Habit stacking. Attach English to habits you already have. After my morning coffee, I'll read one English article. Before bed, I'll listen to an English podcast for 10 minutes. System 3. Community integration. Find communities that share your interests, but use English. Facebook groups for photography, Reddit communities for gaming, LinkedIn groups for career development. How to get through motivation dips. Everyone experiences dips in motivation. What matters is recognizing and overcoming them. Warning signs. You start skipping English activities. You feel bored with your current materials. You doubt your own progress. When a dip hits, don't force yourself. Change your approach. Try new genres, topics, or formats. If you're reading nonfiction, switch to fiction. If you're listening to podcasts, try audiobooks. Sometimes you just need a short break, and then come back. Build a personal learning ecosystem. Successful lifelong learners don't learn alone. They build an ecosystem to support their journey. Layer 1. Content creators you follow regularly. Pick YouTubers, podcasters, and bloggers whose content is naturally interesting to you. Layer 2. Learning buddies. Find people who are learning with you or willing to practice together. Layer 3. Mentors or advanced speakers. This could be teachers, tutors, or simply native speakers willing to help. Layer 4. Communities and events. Language exchange meetups, book clubs, professional networking events conducted in English. With this ecosystem, learning becomes natural and effortless. The final mindset shift. Embrace the infinite game. There are 2 kinds of games in life: finite games and infinite games. Finite games have a beginning, middle, and end. The goal is to win. Infinite games have no ending. The goal is to keep playing. Most people treat language learning as a finite game. They want to reach fluency and then stop. Successful learners treat it as an infinite game. They never stop learning, because learning itself is the reward. When you embrace the infinite game mindset, pressure disappears. You stop worrying about timelines or competing with others. You simply focus on enjoying the process and becoming a better version of yourself every day. So we've explored strategies for sustaining lifelong motivation to learn English. Key takeaways: shift from a sprint mindset to a marathon mindset. Develop intrinsic motivation instead of relying only on extrinsic motivation. Apply the 4 principles: progress over perfection, curiosity over obligation, connection over consumption, and identity over achievement. Build systems instead of depending on willpower. And most importantly, embrace the infinite game. Learning English isn't a destination, it's a journey. And that journey becomes enjoyable when you stop rushing to the finish line. Comment below with your biggest challenge in staying motivated to learn English. In the next section, I'll present a concrete 30-day challenge to completely transform the way you learn English. Part 10. The 30-day challenge that will completely change how you learn English can. 30 days completely change the way you learn English. Sarah from Los Angeles proved that it absolutely can. After 30 days of applying the method I'm about to share, she went from fearing English to confidently presenting in front of 50 colleagues. Today, I'll give you the exact roadmap Sarah followed. A specific challenge, broken down day by day, with guaranteed results if you commit fully. This isn't a casual challenge you can skip through. It's a comprehensive transformation program designed from everything we covered in the previous 9 videos. In this video, you'll receive the complete 30-day blueprint, including daily actions, weekly milestones, and measurable outcomes. I'll break down each week so you know exactly what to do every single day. And finally, I'll show you how to create an accountability system to ensure success. But first, meet Sarah and discover her incredible transformation story. Sarah's transformation story. Sarah is a marketing manager at a tech company in Los Angeles. She could write emails and chat with team members, but whenever she had to present or attend meetings, she felt extremely anxious. Her confidence in English speaking was only 3 out of 10. She always prepared scripts in advance and avoided situations that required improvisation. After discovering my video series, Sarah decided to take on the 30-day challenge. On day 1, she recorded a 2-minute self-introduction video. Watching it back, she realized she hesitated after every sentence and repeated many words. Instead of getting discouraged, she treated it as a baseline to measure improvement. By day 15, Sarah felt comfortable enough to participate actively in team meetings. By day 30, she delivered a presentation on quarterly marketing results without a script. Most importantly, her confidence level jumped from 3 to 8 out of 10. The science behind a 30-day transformation. Why is 30 days the perfect time frame for transformation? Neuroscience research shows that the brain builds new neural pathways in roughly 21 to 30 days with consistent practice. That's why habits often form within this window. For language learning, 30 days is enough to start rewiring the brain from translation mode to thinking mode. But consistency and progressive challenge are crucial. You can't expect transformation if you do the same thing every day. Your brain needs progressive overload, just like muscles at the gym. This challenge is designed to increase difficulty gradually while keeping targets achievable. Week 1. Foundation Building Goal. Establish a strong base and create momentum. Days 1 to 3. Comprehensive assessment. Record yourself speaking about 5 different topics, 2 minutes each. Self-introduction, a hobby, your work, your dreams, and an opinion about a current event. Don't aim for perfect. Aim for an honest snapshot of your current level. Days 4 to 7. Input optimization. Replace all your entertainment content with English versions. Netflix shows, YouTube videos, podcasts, news articles, everything. Your brain will initially resist because it has to work harder, but this is a crucial step. End of week 1. You should feel slightly overwhelmed, but excited about what's ahead. Week 2. Active engagement. This is where the real magic begins. Days 8 to 10. Comprehensible input with active note-taking. While watching shows or listening to podcasts, write down interesting phrases and expressions. Not academic vocabulary. Everyday expressions native speakers use. Days 11 to 14. Output from input. Use the phrases you noted in conversations with yourself. Practice storytelling using the new expressions. Record daily 5-minute monologues on different topics. End of week. 2. You'll notice significant gains in fluency and natural phrasing. Week 3. Confidence building. This is the breakthrough week for most people. Days 15 to 17. Engage with native speakers online. Join English communities that match your interests. Reddit, Discord, Facebook groups. Participate actively, ask questions, share opinions. Days 18 to 21. Tackle complex topics. Watch TED Talks on unfamiliar subjects and summarize the main points. Read articles on controversial issues and form your own opinions. Practice arguing both sides to develop critical thinking in English. End of week 3. Your confidence should rise noticeably. You've proven you can handle complex discussions. Week 4. Integration and mastery. The final week integrates everything you've learned. Days 22 to 24. Professional communication. Practice presentations, write professional emails, and do mock job interviews. If you're working, volunteer for English-speaking projects or meetings. Days 25 to 28. Creative expression. Write short stories, poems, or personal essays. Try a stand-up comedy bit or a dramatic monologue. Creative work pushes your brain to use language in innovative ways. Days 29 to 30. Assessment and celebration. Record the same 5 topics from day 1 and compare your progress. Document your journey and plan how you'll keep growing beyond 30 days. Daily action items. The 70-minute formula. Every day for 30 days, complete these 4 core activities. Morning 20 minutes. Listen to an English podcast while commuting or exercising. Afternoon 15 minutes. Read and comment on an English article related to your field. Evening 25 minutes. Speaking practice, recording, conversation, or presentation prep. Night 10 minutes. Journal in English about what you learned and how you felt. Total daily time, 70 minutes, spaced out to maximize retention. Accountability system for success. This challenge depends heavily on accountability. Layer 1. Self-accountability. Track your daily activities in a simple spreadsheet. Rate your confidence from 1 to 10 to see the trend. Layer 2. Social accountability. Find an accountability partner doing the challenge or join an online community. Share daily updates and support each other on tough days. Layer 3. Public commitment. Post about your challenge on social media and update your progress. Public commitment significantly increases completion rates. No one wants to fail publicly. Measuring results. And what comes next? Don't rely only on feelings. Use concrete metrics. Day 1. Baseline. Speaking speed, vocabulary variety, grammatical accuracy, and confidence level. Weekly milestones. Assess improvements and adjust as needed. Day 30 final. Compare all metrics against day 1 to see your exact gains. But the real measure is how integrated English becomes in your daily life. Are you thinking in English more often? Do you feel comfortable joining conversations? Can you express complex ideas without heavy preparation? Beyond 30 days, this challenge should create momentum for a lifelong learning journey. Common challenges and solutions. Problem. Keeping consistency when motivation dips. Fix. Rely on systems, not motivation. Don't break the daily chain. Problem. Feeling overwhelmed by too much English input. Fix. Start with familiar topics and expand gradually. Problem. Fear of mistakes when speaking with natives. Fix. Reframe mistakes as data. Communication greater than perfection. Problem. Plateau around day 20. Fix. Raise the difficulty and try completely new content or activities. And that's the complete 30-day challenge to transform your English learning journey. We covered everything, from Sarah's inspiring story to a detailed daily action plan. Week 1. Build foundations and momentum. Week 2. Active engagement with comprehensible input and output practice. Week 3. Confidence through native speaker interaction and complex topics. Week 4. Integration via professional communication and creative expression. Remember, this isn't a magic trick. It's a proven system grounded in neuroscience and real learner results. Success depends on your commitment to follow through consistently for all 30 days. If you're ready to transform your English learning, start the challenge tomorrow morning. This challenge won't just improve your English. It will prove to you that you can achieve anything you fully commit to. Your transformation starts now.